Welcome back to Keeping Coop in the Loop. This is the City of Cooper City's official podcast where we strive to provide residents with in-depth conversations that help give a better understanding of the projects, programs, and initiatives that are taking place in Someplace Special. I'm Mike Cabello, Director of Communications for Cooper City. This episode focuses on grant funding and the critical role that those dollars play in accelerating and executing projects that impact you, our listeners, the residents and stakeholders of Cooper City. This can be described as a total team effort. Members of the City Commission travel to Tallahassee and Washington each year, advocating for city projects and doing what they can to bring state and federal funding back to Cooper City. In recent months, we've seen grant-funded projects come to fruition, and there are several in the pipeline as city staff does its part in working to secure more funding. So joining us today on Keeping Coop in the Loop, we have an opportunity to talk about how Parks and Recreation, just one of the departments in the city, works hand in hand with our grants administrator. So the first thing I wanted to do is give an opportunity to introduce our guests. So I'll start with Renee Wilson, who's our grants administrator. Renee, just want to give the residents just that 30,000 foot view on what you do on a day-to-day basis and your responsibility in terms of, just giving folks a little bit of what you do on a day-to-day and the experience that you help bring to the city.
Hi, sure. Thanks a lot, Michael. Well, again, my name is Renee Wilson, and I am the grants administrator for the city. And the experience that I brought to Cooper City is a culmination of over 30 years of municipal government experience, and that spans across grants, research, composition, and administration, working with lobbyists to secure legislative appropriations, citywide strategic planning, master planning, managing grants alongside project managers to ensure that they complete their projects in compliance with grant agreements, and to ensure that cities capture that full reimbursement of the grant funds that we were originally awarded, which is extremely important in the grants process. And also includes public affairs and communications so that the public is aware of how grants impact the city.
And obviously in one of those departments that works very closely with Renee over the past few months has been Parks and Recreation. So Josh, you've been here for a while, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. There's many in the community that you meet with or you've come across or that you've gotten to work with in some sense. But to those who don't know you, an opportunity to introduce yourself.
Again, my name is Joshua Rhodes. I'm the Assistant Parks and Recreation Director. I've been with the city for about 10 years, Mike, and like you said, I got to know a lot of different people here in the city, working with them from the Optimist Clubs to different community groups. And I would say, starting my career here in Cooper City, working at the Pool Attendant Center at the front desk, I was able to meet tons of residents coming in and out of the facility every day, working at special events, getting to know people. But on a day-to-day basis, you can find me still at the Pool Attendant Center. I'm working with Renee and working with other departments, ensuring our parks and recreation departments getting the funds and getting updated when it comes to our facilities, when it comes to our programming, and when it comes to our policies, because everything's changing in the world we live in, and we have to stay up with those changes in Parks and Recreation.
And so, Josh, let's dive into two exciting projects that just basically, it's almost like they got started and just a few months later, residents, our commission, the staff got an opportunity to celebrate them. Two playgrounds that got renovated. Tell us a little bit about those projects and now what residents are getting to enjoy compared to what was there before.
Well, let's start right here at Community Center Tot Lot. Community Center Tot Lot before was a small playground that was just a top playground. And when I came in and started working with Renee, we had opportunity to do a grant. And in that grant opportunity, we provided a new kind of state-of-the-art playground that provided slides and different elements of play. But the biggest element that we provide, in my take, would be the ADA safety surfacing. So now where our kids are out playing, if they fall down from the height of the slide, or if they fall off of one of the balance beam rails, they'll bounce right back up. There's no injuries really that happens when you hit that ADA surface. That's called port and play. And a project adding port and play to all our sites has been one of the goals of our city commission. So this was the first site in Cooper City to have port and play, which is very exciting to have at our playgrounds. And then we'll go look at City Mike Park, which was formerly known as Flamingo Park. And City Mike Park is an exciting piece of property. It has the only zip line in the city. And on this zip line, kids can grab a hold of that little cord and zip right across the park from playground, really from one side to the other, and land on a safe platform. We also have a spinner bowl, which is one of my personal favorites. You kind of sit in and you kick your legs back, and it'll just spin you around and around. We also have the ADA safety servicing there, and we did a beautification in the front of the park also that really stands out to me and kind of adds a pop to that park.
Certain staff members may or may not have had an opportunity to take a trip on that zip line. So, it's a little fun for everybody.
Especially Joshua, because he tested it out, and he said, he said it works great. Right, Joshua?
I actually tested it out twice. One good thing about working in Parks and Recreation when you're installing these new playgrounds, you get to play first. And I was able to test the zip line before the ribbon cutting, and it was an exciting time to test it out. And I'm very excited to have this in the parks now.
I think it's a favorite item at City Mike's Park is that zip line. One of the favorites.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I mean, and what's also great about it is that the park is named after Michael Reardon, who was a long time. He worked for the city, was very involved in volunteerism, and it's just great in a sense that an individual who is symbolic with what the city is about families, about children, about the parks, that the park is now has one of the better amenities, if you will, something that kids can enjoy. So, Renee, I'm going to jump to you in terms of the grant funding that obviously went a long way in supporting the two projects that Josh just talked about.
Yes.
When you look at those two projects, how much money did the city receive in grant funding?
Right. So as Joshua mentioned, these projects are partially funded through grant funding. The grant funding is from the Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program, also known as FERDAP grants, administered by the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. And the Community Center Tot Lot was awarded $50,000 in FERDAP grant funds to go towards the new playground development and park landscape. And City Mike Park was awarded $112,500 in grant funds for the new playground development and the park landscape. So grant funding did play a significant role in ensuring that these projects were brought to fruition for the community.
And so just for the residents' perspective, this is money that helps supplement the money that is coming out of their taxes. And we're going to have another podcast down the road where we really deep dive a little bit into finance so that our residents really have an understanding about the chunk or the portion that is coming out of their annual taxes that actually goes to the city. And when you start looking at $112,000, $50,000, you start to realize, Josh, it's fair to say grant funding helps accelerate these projects. If without the grant funding, in a sense, it's not to say these projects can't take place, but it would probably have to wait a little while. Is that fair to say?
Oh, Mike, it's definitely fair to say. One thing about having the grant funding, what it allows us to do, it allowed us to go back and take additional city funds and enhance other elements of the park, like I talked about, like safety surfacing. So typically our parks did not have that safety surfacing, and it's relatively expensive, but with it being a commission objective, a goal per se, to have that at all our parks, having the grant funding to come in and supplement the additional fees just took us over the top.
And so, there's more renovations on the horizon. We know that. Two projects were just recently commission approved. With Ellie Kozak Park, but and not to I guess oversimplify the project, that'll be at that smaller park, but one of the more massive approvals. And I think Commissioner Katzman was on the dais when he said it. This is a decision that they were making for not just now. It wasn't like a symbolic thing. It was an actual investment in the future of the city, because we're all about families. A very big investment in the park that's going to be going on at Fardelmann Sports Complex. Just wanted to see if you can share some details about what residents can look forward to there.
I was going to keep that a secret, but since you asked, what's going to go on there? Well, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board met, and they actually got a chance to pick our design for that playground. So it's been a couple of renderings out there already, But what's going to come up, you're going to have swings, you're going to have slides, you're going to have climbers, you're even going to have a dinosaur that kids can climb on and kind of play with. It's going to be at the park. Don't quote me, I believe it's a Stegosaurus, with the little spikes on the back. There's going to be some footprints out there, which kids love to kind of use those pieces like that as an imagination piece where you can kind of let the kids' imagination grow. The biggest thing that's coming from this playground, too, besides all the fun, climbers, and activities that you can do at the park with the kids' imaginations and spinners, it's also that this playground is going to be a destination site with the 7 elements of play and also the safety aspect of it. Again, with that safety surfacing throughout the playground, we'll have safety surfacing. It is going to be completely ADA accessible with transition points and things for children of all ages and abilities.
The other exciting thing that's been rolling through, it's almost like, and I'm going to take a step back. When residents hear master plans, it's, oh, you plan this. There's so many plans. I think I literally heard somebody say that during the big workshop at the community center. We have all these plans. How are we going to put it into work? So one of them has been the Parks and Rec master plan. That's been in the works. I wanted to have an idea of what the Parks and Rec master plan, what's the overall goal as we go moving forward from just the plan to how it's going to be implemented and where people can actually see and touch what actually it's going to do.
Well, I think the Parks and Recreation master plan and all the plans in the city kind of serves two focuses, maybe 3, but 2 I want to definitely stand on and talk about today would be the Parks and Recreation master plan is going to provide a guide from the residents, because residents got to give their own feedback into what they're looking for in our parks, what they're looking for in our playgrounds, what they're looking for in our green spaces. So by knowing what they're looking for, we're able to provide that back to them when we start doing our build outs. When I start designing playgrounds and start designing green spaces, I'll know exactly what the residents had asked for. And the second part of that was the biggest part. I'm going to turn it over to Renee again. I think she knows what that is. It's the grant funding that we can get and request or have the opportunity to apply for, should I say, because applying is the big part of the grant. The first step really is identifying the need, which this master plan is going to be able to do, identify those needs and that priority list, and then we're able to apply for it. So Renee, you kind of tackle how our master plan is going to help you apply for grants.
Yeah, absolutely. But first I wanted to touch on the Fardelmann Sports Complex project that also, Mike, received grant funding from the Land and Water Conservation Fund of $246,500 to go towards those improvements that Joshua mentioned. So that's a significant contribution for that project. In terms of master planning, yes, the city is completing and developing master plans, citywide assessments to identify priority projects for funding pursuit. So a few projects that we've moved forward with to pursue grant funding, whereby we've already requested funding, include the city's police department. It includes a stormwater master plan development. It includes funding for the Cooper City new Headworks facility, and this is federal, legislative, and state funding requests for the 49th Street culvert and to continue the gravity sewer rehab phases throughout the city. Also, as Joshua mentioned, in terms of planning and grants, it's imperative to understand that planning is necessary. The planning phase is necessary in grants pursuit. It is the foundation for grants pursuit. So there's identifying those priorities in the master plan. What are the community's needs? Assessing what the community prioritizes, getting that feedback, engaging with the residents, local businesses, and also stakeholders, developing that grant strategy that aligns with the funder, identifying those priorities, ensuring that we have the capacity, ensuring that we have internal capacity, we have the right people in the right place, like Joshua in parts to assist in ensuring that these applications are aligned with the funder. We are able to score highly in these competitive competitions because grants are a competition. We're not the only city going for them. So we have to stand out and ensuring that we have a dedicated team that when we do secure those funds, we're also able to administer that grant. So yes, master planning is an important process in grant funding. It is typically planning, design, then execution and closure. So without me having a plan and a directive of what those priorities are, how much they cost, and how we will fund them, it is near impossible to pursue funding. We do need master planning. It's definitely the foundation. And you also spoke, Mike, about finance, to be able to identify diverse funding sources where there's grants, there's possibly bonds, or there's possibly loans, or there's other funding sources identified to come to the table to make these projects actually come to fruition. So it's a huge undertaking. And it takes a lot of departments and resources coming together to be able to execute the priority projects that are coming forward in these plans.
Yeah. And go ahead, Josh.
Renee, I just want to touch on something you mentioned. We talked about the closeout, and right now, as people are enjoying City Mike Park and Tot Lot Park, me and Renee are still working on the closeout, because the closeout is kind of the last most important piece of the project in my sense, because that's when we take all our documentation, all our pictures, all our work, compliance, and, everything that the grant has put forward for us to follow, and we have to provide that back to the state or whoever we're receiving the grant from, and actually give them a report, very comprehensive report on how this project went from A to Z.
Very comprehensive.
Very comprehensive.
Yes.
And, the requirements sometimes, you come back with the closeout packet. It's a lot to put together from pictures, because things are happening on the ground. The first day when we did the ribbon cutting, before we cut the ribbon, Community Center Tot Lot, there was a kid out there going down the slide. I'm like, wait, we gotta we want to get pictures, and you're concerned about, because you want to make sure you're showing the documented what you provided to the community. Also, you want the community to get on there and use it as soon as possible, but we also have to show that same perfect image to our providers of the grants, letting them know this was installed properly. This wasn't a used piece of equipment. This was a new item that was put down. So kind of capturing those images and making sure everything's perfect, and having that together for the closeout is so important.
Yeah, grants from beginning to end is labor intensive, and it requires many hands at the table coming together to get it done. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and so you hit on a number of projects, Renee, that fall outside of even Parks and Rec. These are massive infrastructure projects that are going to touch not just the residents but visitors. One of them, obviously, you mentioned Sterling Road. I think anybody that drives Sterling Road would say there's a stretch that obviously is long overdue. And Renee, you've already helped the city ensure that the full capturing of grant funds through your administration of over $8 million in grant funding of citywide projects in just a few short months, less than a year since you started. You hit on your experience at the very top of our podcast here, but it's not just about that the grants are there. It's looking for them and understanding what works for what project. Can you just talk about how your experience helps you navigate through that? Let's call it's a tedious process, but important. Just how your experience helps you look for where you need to go.
Absolutely. So, yes, I start at the beginning. It's important to research each opportunity. And I mean, there is a release of the opportunity in what's called a NOFO. So it's a Notice of Funding Opportunity. That thing can go from 50 pages to 200 pages. So you have to read through that document thoroughly to understand what the funder is looking for, the compliance pieces, what's required, if your project is even eligible. And from there, I attend the funder's workshop or webinar, because now I want to be able to sit in, ask questions about the funding opportunity, propose to them the project that we potentially could pitch towards this opportunity, and see if it aligns with what the funder is requesting, if it is an eligible project. From there, you look at the application, and you go through the application. You assemble the team of people that are necessary. If it's a utilities project, you have the utilities director, you have the project manager, subject matter experts, you have finance, you have budget, and you have the manager ultimately decides what to go for. And then we sit down, we have a conversation, we break down the application, we see whether or not it's feasible, whether or not it's going to benefit the city, whether or not it works for us, and then from there we make a decision. You have a go, no-go decision. You take it to the commission for approval. We've already spoken about, through budget and finance, whether or not we have a matching component. Most grants require the applicant to come to the table with something as well. There's no such thing as free money. So grants typically come with a matching requirement. There's 25% minimum on some, there's 50% minimum on some grants. So you have to come to the table with cash. For those grants that don't require a cash match, there's still, as Joshua and I spoke about, the labor-intensive administration and management of that grant. So it will require, if not a cash match, staff resources to match the administration of that grant. So those things come together before you even start to compose the application. Then there's the attachment of exhibits. There's the attachment of much, Joshua is nodding, a lot of paperwork to come alongside that grant just to submit the application. Then they have their review process. And in their review, they could come back to you and say, we need this, 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 and that to also be included in the submission before it even gets to approval. Then when it's approved for the FERDAP grants even, they need a whole commencement package submission before they even give you the NTP, the notice to proceed. So yeah, it is a labor-intensive process. It is time-consuming. It also involves the consumption of many hands to the table, staff members and departments. So though grants are rewarding for cities to assist them in supplementing the budget to get things done, you have to understand that they also take a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and I think it's not just internally, it's also, we know that our elected representatives, whether they're in Tallahassee, in Washington, play a major role in working to bring money back to not just Broward County, but specifically Cooper City.
Absolutely.
Is it fair to say, can residents, residents obviously, it's hard for them to know all the inner workings of the grants, but in terms of communicating with elected representatives that go to Tallahassee, to Washington, it's fair to say, if you want to find out what the city is doing in terms of grants, it just takes really coming to a meeting, understanding, asking some questions, and perhaps writing to your elected official. I know we say that as if it's very easy, but it truly is. I think you mentioned it's a competition. Everybody's going for these pools of money.
The same pot.
and any little thing can help. So, I mean, to those who are listening, for residents, Renee mentioned FERDAP. That was Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program. Just one of the programs that helps develop. If you're passionate about our parks and you want to see major improvements, going forward into the future, just one letter, anything that you do in communicating with elected officials goes a long way. One of the things that you mentioned, Renee, was, all the different infrastructure projects that are being planned. Could you hit on perhaps one of the bigger ones where you see grant funding is going to be pivotal? Without it, I think it would be fair to say that the city could probably not be able to do this project until way down the road.
Absolutely. That project would be the Cooper City Wastewater Treatment Plant New Headworks Facility project. That project is estimated at $7.8 million. So this project is a priority for the Utilities Department and for the city. Currently, we don't have a headworks facility, and the headworks facility is needed as a process by which to grade through certain elements to ensure they don't pass through the utilities system. I think our director could provide a higher end scope, but essentially that system is necessary for the grading process and removal process of sediment and debris from the utilities wastewater treatment plant. So yeah, that project is coming in at about $7.8 million. Right now the city is taking that step to initiate the design phase, is in progress for this, which Mike really helps us in terms of presenting our project to our Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was where we presented this project, and she's fighting for us on the federal level to ensure that the city gets as much money as possible for the construction phase, which is around $6.24 million is what we're hoping to receive. So she's fighting for us on the front there. Yeah, it's a huge project. It's a project that's going to make a big difference in the city, and it is a priority of the city to get this project done. And without federal appropriation, without these dollars, it would be extremely difficult to execute this project.
No doubt about it. I really want to thank you both for, giving our residents, I call it this way, pulling the curtains back, giving an opportunity to learn about the things going on. It's easy, if you're wondering where can I find out about this information, our weekly e-newsletter that goes out every Thursday, really provides information on these projects, whether they're parks projects, utilities projects. So really encourage everyone listening to this conversation to subscribe to our e-newsletters, follow us on our social media channels, because information is provided pretty much on a weekly basis. Renee, Josh, I just want to thank you both for taking part, providing your insights and information that really goes a long way to informing our residents.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mike. And I would just say one more thing. If you could provide that website attached to this podcast where they can see all our park projects and updates going on. We try to keep it updated as regularly as possible, just so residents can see all the moving pieces and things that are going on in our park system.
We'll definitely provide a link, and at the same time, you can find that at coopercity.gov/parks and project updates. That's pretty much where you can find what's going on our parks. You can also see what fields are open at different times. And Josh is also pretty much leads the way in terms of helping to, if you want to rent a park or a pavilion, he like many folks in the city of Cooper City, we wear different hats. And again, thank you both for taking part.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Tireless and determined. I think you would agree, if you've been listening to the conversation, that these are two words that could be used to describe our city commission and staff, as it literally takes a village to identify, pursue, and secure grant funding, all in the mission of supplementing the annual budget and working to lessen the overall tax burden on Cooper City's residents. Before we end this episode of the podcast, I want to mention that Cooper City is in the midst of redesigning and improving the city website. This new website is going to have a page dedicated to grants administration. It will lay out all of the projects that are either in the pipeline, in progress, or completed. I will have more information on the website and information that you can find on that website in our next podcast. As always, you can also follow us on social media for news and event information. It's on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We also have a Nextdoor account, so we post information there as well. On behalf of the entire Cooper City team, I'm Mike Cabello. I thank you for listening. Our city team thanks you for listening. And we look forward to talking to you next time as we continue keeping Coop in the loop.